Welcome to Blueprint Unlocked, our podcast about all things Maryland Blueprint and the work we are doing in Frederick County Public Schools to bring this vision to life. I'm your host, Dr. Sarah Sergo, Chief of Staff and Blueprint Implementation Coordinator for the school system. Blueprint Unlocked is designed to unpack, understand, and yes, unlock the work we're doing across the 5 key dimensions or pillars of the blueprint. Along with our milestone report, quarterly update newsletter, and resources, we wanted to bring you additional opportunities to hear about our work directly from the experts who are leading these efforts. Today, we're going to unlock Pillar 5, Governance and Accountability. I'd like to welcome to the podcast one of the chairs of our Pillar 5 subcommittee and my co-chair for all of the blueprint work, Heather Claybaugh, Associate Superintendent of Fiscal Services. We'd like to have you introduce yourself and unlock your Pillar 5 story. Can you share what you do currently and why you are passionate about fiscal governance and accountability?
Well, I have been with FCPS for a little bit over 10 years and have been serving on the blueprint or some part of the blueprint since it was the Kirwan Commission several years ago as I was assisting our former CFO with some of the implementation. It has been quite the journey over the few years as we've been looking at what this means to FCPS. Even from the fiscal standpoint, it's changed the way we do business, and it's changing the way we will continue to do business as the 10-year implementation continues. I think one of the biggest challenges that we've had, and the reason why I'm passionate about it, is because I know that we provide our resources at the school-based level, and this is really an opportunity for us to show how the dollars follow the students. It's not an easy path to show that, but it is certainly a valuable resource-focused path that we're on.
Well, like you said, Pillar 5 is about governance and accountability. And this year, FCPS has achieved a number of milestones. 2 of the current milestones I wanted to highlight are the development of the budgeting and categorical analysis you just referenced, about making sure that 75% of student funding is directed to the school. And the other is about the way that your team, the fiscal services team, is working with other central office departments to budget and allocate large expenses, such as dual enrollment, utilities, curriculum materials, and technology directly to the school level. So when you think about what you might want to highlight for our audience about the work we've done in this pillar and what you would want to celebrate, what are you most proud of? And what would you want our listeners to know most about what's going on?
Well, the 75% requirement in the blueprint means that you have to allocate at least 75% of your resources from various funding to the school level. And so while that has not been the law of the land, we last year for our fiscal year 23 created some analysis to see how far we were away from that. And frankly, we're right there. We have a few schools, and as one would imagine, they're schools with significant populations of students who receive free and reduced meals or may have English language learners. And so they're outliers in regards to how their population, how their student enrollment is in regards to all of our other schools. But we're very close to accomplishing that goal already. And so we were very proud that what we thought we knew about how we allocate our resources, we actually do. And frankly, some of this started a few years ago when the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, which is federal legislation, required as part of the Maryland report card to show a per pupil allocation. So we started some of that work a few years ago, and this has really just intensified the work. And I think the fiscal services team, while we're not out in the schools every day, we know that everything that we do touches our students. And this is just an opportunity for us to show how our work is involved. And we work very closely throughout the organization to assist schools and assist central office in ensuring that we meet all of our financial requirements. The 75% rule is not the only financial reporting requirement we have. It's one of many on state, federal, and local reporting that we handle. And so it's a very intense way to look at reporting. I think people forget that we have hundreds of thousands of transactions that happen, and now we have to somehow fit them into this new reporting requirement. And so we've been working very closely with our centralized departments who do some purchasing for schools, and it's changed the way they've had to look at their work. And I think that's just going to continue as we continue through the implementation process and as we look for additional guidance from MSDE as well as the AIB.
Well, and I want to go in a little bit more about this notion of sort of the connectedness for students. A lot of people don't automatically think about the important role that fiscal services has in those student success outcomes. And we always say that the 5 pillars of the blueprint are connected and interdependent. And so while pillar 5 focuses on governance and accountability, we know that there is a direct connection between monitoring and success. Based on your experiences, how do you believe this work that you're pursuing is going to support student outcomes?
Well, I think one of the tenets of budgeting is that your budget shows where your priorities lie. It happens in your home budget. When you think about your home budget, where do your priorities lie? It's probably in your rent, your utilities, your mortgage, the occasional fun thing you get to do. And that's the way FCPS's budget is. Where do our priorities lie? 85% of our budget is about staffing and their benefits. And the majority of our staffing is school-based staffing, whether it's the teacher that greets the student in the morning or the administrative personnel that's in the front office or a custodian or the gentleman or young lady who walks in to make sure that the heat's working, especially on a terrible cold day like today. That's where we're focused. And I think you see those priorities when you look at our budget. And this is just a way of amplifying those priorities and really reporting on it and showing. It's not been an easy road in regards to the reporting. And I think one of the concerns that we have in regards to it is, are we a resource allocation or an accounting allocation? And that's our big, we want to support the students' outcomes, and we are by funding various initiatives throughout the system. But the ease of reporting on it has been a little bit of where our struggle has been. And I think it's important that this is a great way to show that the students who need the most assistance are receiving it, whether the student is a special ed student, whether the student is a student who comes from poverty, whether the student English may not be their first language. It's showing how we provide the layered necessity that on what we refer to as the continuum of services that the students receive. And this is really just the financial aspect of showing how those continuum of services are every day happening at FCPS.
Well, that's such a great description of sort of how you have to bring tremendous transparency to how you budget to be able to show those connections, and all the things that we are doing for students really come down to how we allocate those resources. You mentioned, this is a multi-year endeavor. The blueprint is a 10-year endeavor. We're in year 3 at this point. And so while there's a lot to celebrate, we know that there's still more to accomplish. So when you think about the work ahead, what are you focused on right now that you want to highlight?
Well, we're really focused on the reporting requirements, frankly. And there's a system that is as part of the legislation that is developed within the state with MSDE, and we're working with MSDE to get that system up and running. Frederick County likes to pride itself on being part of the solution and jumping in and helping and being there at the foundation. We'd rather help make the rules than have the rules made for us. So we participate in quite a lot of work groups throughout the state to try to get this work accomplished. And that's where we are right now, is working through those reporting requirements. We've done a lot of work on our end, and we're waiting for some additional guidance from MSDE and AIB. And as one would imagine, this is a very large, sophisticated budget, and things can't be changed immediately. And we have by law, there is a timeline. Come June 30th, our budget has to be balanced and ready and reported to the state. And having the information that we need to get that budget reported correctly to the state really can't happen on June the 1st. We need a little bit more time. So that's really where we're focused on right now, is making sure that we meet the reporting requirements and helping MSDE and the AIB through participating in work groups.
Well, and one of the things you talked about is sort of visioning and doing things differently in the future. And one of the things we're trying to unlock with Blueprint is that notion of innovation and what opportunities come out of new thinking. This means that our teams are being asked to really think deeply about the work we have planned, and in some cases, reimagine some of our more traditional approaches in favor of new ideas. So as you look toward the future, what do you hope to accomplish through this work in the next 3 to 5 years for Pillar 5?
Well, I think it's important to understand is that there's not a significant amount of additional funding that's coming with the Blueprint. Yes, there will be an increase to the per pupil allocation over the 10 years, but it's certainly not going to be enough to just simply layer on the new requirements of the Blueprint. And I think from the fiscal services and the governance part of it is we're helping to guide how that's being reimagined. It's not enough for us to say we need additional funds for X. We need to look at the existing funds and the existing programs we have and see how that fits into the ideas of the Blueprint. And I think, FCPS was in a position where it was ahead of the curve because of things like our tiered staffing model, which looked at a lot, or continues to look at a lot of the items that are important to the Blueprint, ensuring that students have the resources that they need. And that's what what our tiered staffing formula has done. And I think that work is going to continue, and that's probably going to be the biggest part of the work as we continue over the next 3 to 5 years, simply because that's where the majority of our resources are spent. By the Blueprint, prior to the Blueprint, that's what we've been doing. And so we just need to look at that, and we need to tweak the model and also look at what are some of the changes are required as we continue on and see what the implications of the Blueprint, such as the additional pre-K students. What does that mean to your administrative staffing model? Additional students in EL, as that population has changed significantly in Frederick County. And to top it all off, a growing population of enrollment. One of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing, counties in the state of Maryland, and what that means while we're also implementing all of these changes.
Well, and I think your description that we can't just layer on, and so we can't just say we need more money. Really, I think the intent of the Blueprint is to ask us to look at how we currently allocate our money and say, instead of doing this with it, you might need to do that. And so while we tend to layer on new things on top of existing, we have to let go of some things as well as we make space for some of these really intentional priorities. Well,
Absolutely.
Heather. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think it's also important to remember, and it's that old adage of, we are a barge, so we turn slowly. We're not a speed race boat, so we're not going to turn on a dime. And that turning, fortunately, there's a 10-year implementation. So that turning is going to continue to happen as we get through the 10 years.
Yeah. And so I think that's a great sort of illustration of how slow we move. And so how do we have efficiency and expediency and accountability sort of all together, which is really what this pillar really asks us to do. Well, thank you to our guest, Heather Clabaugh, for all of her insights today. Your knowledge and expertise is going to be the key to all of our Blueprint work. The information you shared today was super helpful and insightful as we unlock this topic for everyone. And that brings us to the end of our time today. Please go to our website, www.fcps.org/Blueprint, and select Stakeholder Resources to check out more information and unlock the Blueprint with us. Thank you.